Hello, and welcome to Engineerability Podcast. My name is Ajmal, and I'm a technology enthusiast with a passion for security, cloud computing, data science, and product management. I've been working in the technology consulting industry for several years, and I'm committed to helping engineers and entrepreneurs grow their businesses and startup through collaborative efforts. In addition to my professional experience, I'm also an advocate of open source software and believe in its power to bring about positive change in the tech industry. That's why I created Engineerability, a community for engineers and entrepreneurs to share ideas and learn from each other and facilitate growth through joint efforts. I'm excited to share my knowledge and insights with you on this podcast, and I hope you will join me on this journey as we explore the trends and technologies in the world of engineering and entrepreneurship. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned.
Hi, good morning, guys. This is Arsalan here from Engineerability Podcast. Along with myself, we have Robert Mascott, who is the author, co-founder of Robert Mascott. He is the coach and a mentor at various tech startups and incubators as well. We have, along with us, we have Mohammed Ajmal, who is a co-founder at Engineerability as well, who is trying to develop the engineers community for the tech startups in parallel. So we would like to begin with Robert Mascot to ask a couple of questions which are moving around in the arena of the startup to technology to understanding what sort of founders would require to fulfill the skills which the industry needs, and how one of the challenges they are able to tackle with regards to this, right? And Robert, James, I do understand that you have written a book which is called Investable Entrepreneur, and which moves in the line of how to convince how to convince your investors for the business they are building, right? So, can you elaborate in summary, not going in details, but as a holistic view, what's how do we rotate around it?
Yeah, so I wrote the book Investable Entrepreneur, really because I saw a massive problem, a massive gap in founders' ability to successfully raise investment with investors. There was about a 1% success rate of founders successfully raising their investment, and I felt like I could really solve that problem. We attended some pitch events. We looked at the way founders were pitching, and we could see that the biggest issue really was their ability to communicate their idea to investors. Investors were kind of getting blank, glazed over looks. When they were pitching, they didn't really know what the business was, how that business was going to deliver them a return, whether they could trust this founder to actually deliver and execute on this idea and turn it into a profitable and scalable business. So we felt that we could really help that communication issue that we saw with founders, and through loads of research with investors and founders who were actively pitching, I kind of formulated a structure of how to create the kind of the perfect pitch, a pitch that would not only get you in meetings with investors, but ultimately you had all of the assets, all the materials, all the knowledge sitting behind that pitch that allowed you to successfully close the round. So in a nutshell, Investable Entrepreneur is kind of the conclusion of all that research and the strategy that we put in place for founders that ultimately resulted in founders being 40 times more likely to raise investment. Our clients we get a higher success rate than the top 10 global accelerators in terms of follow-on funding. We know this approach works, and it's all kind of documenting kind of everything you need to know about how to raise investment, what you need to do, what you need in place, and then ultimately how to go out and find investors to get them to actually pitch to. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what the book's all about.
Great, good to hear that. And I have, from my experience, I've seen in the industry today, as of today, when you talk about starting, building a startup, what founders think about, hey, I need to build a great product, and automatically I'll start getting customers, but that's not true, right? Because eventually what's more important is how you narrate the story to your investors, how you narrate the story to your customers, right? And that gap, the hours that the founders spend, they're more spending hours in building the product, but they on the hindsight forget the part, like how do you narrate the story, because they're so involved in building the product. How do you think we can reduce that gap, at the same time have a check and balance for both things?
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Founders love to very much focused on their product, the thing that they're building, and it's really important for founders, especially whether you're raising investment or whether you're trying to actually go on to sell that product to a customer, to take a step back and really think about who are my audience, what am I building, why would they need it. So in exactly the same way that if you are selling your product to your audience, you should be taking a step back from the product and kind of thinking, do I actually need these features and these benefits? Does this product actually solve the customer's problems? And what's my market positioning to that product? Because 80% of unicorns have won not because they've got the best products, but because they've been really able to nail market positioning and take market share from competitors. So I think most founders are probably aware, or at least should be aware, that they need to take a step back from product sometimes and look at it through the lens of a consumer, and what do they want, what do they need, what problems does it solve for them, and then communicate those benefits to your audience in a way that engages them. The same is exactly true when you're trying to raise investment, because all you're doing with investment is trying to get someone to buy your shares. Your shares become the product, and the target audience becomes the investor. So you need to take a step back from the product, and you need to look at it through the eyes of the investor. They say, what does the investor want? Well, the investor is doing this not because they like me. They're not doing it because they think I've got a great idea necessarily. They're doing it because they want to make a commercial return. They want to invest maybe, I don't know, $1 million today, and they want to be able to sell the shares in the future for a minimum $10 million, if not $30 or $50 million. So they're looking at this as a commercial return. So you now need to look at pitching your idea in a way that convinces investors. If I buy your shares, £1 million worth of shares today, or $1 million worth of shares today, they're going to be worth $10 million in the future. And that's the bit that most founders really struggle with, is taking that step back and viewing their business through the lens and through the eyes of an investor. And how can we convince an investor that beyond this being a great idea, it's actually something that can deliver them the type of returns they're looking for? Because they're investing in you today based on the promise of tomorrow. And you've got to really convince them that not only your concept is something that has the potential to turn into a business of that scale, but you as a founder have the ability to make it happen. You can actually execute on this idea. You can turn it into a profitable and scalable business. So that can be a real challenge, taking that step back and creating that narrative for many founders.
And since one of the keywords that you have mentioned is the word convincing the investors, right? The convincing part is part of a soft skill, right? So eventually, what the founder is trying to do is he's selling his dream, and that dream is built on so many unknown variables. Okay, so how from your perspective, how would a new founder sell the dream or convince to the investor, saying that, hey, this is what I want to sell, because no one knows eventually where is this going to end up.
Yeah, so typically founders, the trouble is, right, investors and entrepreneurs speak entirely different languages. They've got a completely different mindset. So entrepreneurs will talk about opportunities and possibilities and ideas, maybe income, top level revenues. Investors, while they care about those things, are equally about financial risk, underlying valuable assets, market proof, implementation strategies. All of these things matter to an investor, and they're things that founders very rarely spend little time on. I mean, most entrepreneurs do this because they have a real love for a concept or an idea that they've had. Very few founders get up in the morning going, you know what I want to do today? I want to do risk analysis. No entrepreneur enjoys doing these things. But investors, it really matters to investors. You have to be able to show the full picture to make them want to buy your shares. So fundamentally, investors are looking for two things when you pitch to them. First, it's a brilliant concept. with incredible opportunity to scale into a huge market. So they're looking for the ideas, the possibilities, the opportunities. Of course they are. But on the 50% of their decision making is based on you, the founder, you, the entrepreneur. And can you take this idea from where it is today to a point at which it's going to turn into a highly scalable, highly profitable business? Do you have the implementation strategy in the short and the long term to make that happen? Do you understand what valuable underlying assets you're building around the business across IP and brand and technology to make this company valuable in the future? Do you understand the financial risks involved in trying to get to that target in a short space of time, the costs involved, and therefore what are you doing to mitigate those financial risks for the investor and protect their capital? Because essentially they're entrusting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to you to go and turn into something more valuable in the future. So you really need to do as much as you can to make them trust you as an individual, not just that this is a brilliant concept. And that's where most founders fail. That's where they forget. They focus on their idea, and this idea is going to be awesome, and they forget to convince an investor at how they are a good strategic bet. They're a solid pair of hands. They're a safe bet, and that they have the plan for success. And that's why we founders really is tell that story and get both those things across. So the investor sits back and goes, wow, this is a brilliant concept, but the founder's incredible. Like, I really trust this founder to make that happen. And that's what you want to get from a really good investor pitch.
Right. Good to hear that. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Ajmal.
just a small question. That brings me to one question. When do you think a startup is ready, is sustainable, or maybe it's not sustainable at the moment? When do you think the startup is ready for the next round of the investment? Is
So you
it
need to
they have to measure the sustainability at the same time to keep it lean themselves? And what is the parameters which we are looking for?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one to answer because it can change for different sectors
True.
and different business models. But as a general rule, you would be using kind of a very small amount of funding, either your own bootstrapped funding, you're working 2 or 3 jobs and you're throwing everything into the startup and doing as much as yourself as possible. Perhaps you've got a bit of friends and family money, 10 to 50,000 that you've been able to get through a very early stage angel investor that perhaps is someone in your local community who's a business leader who really trusts you, or a friend, family that might have some capital that they could invest and entrust into you. That's your kind of first round. And the goal of that round, that initial investment or that self-invested funds, is to get to the point where you have some form of validation. So some form of like, this is something the market wants and something the market needs. So this would be surveys, focus groups, industry experts validating the concept, perhaps very early stage wireframes or prototypes of the product. It doesn't need to be an excessive amount of money spent on development, but just we're trying to prove the concept here. Perhaps you've created a concept pitch and you've gone and pitched that out to who your potential customers might be and got their buy-in and saying, if this existed in the market, would you want to buy it? And if you did, how much would you want to buy it for? So you're trying to kind of identify and have evidence for 4 things, really. 1, the problem is something that people want solving. 2, your solution is something that people would use to solve that problem. 3, how much people would be willing to pay to solve that problem using your product. And 4, is the market big enough that there's enough people with that problem who'd be willing to buy this solution for you to have a profitable business? So your first friends and family shouldn't be spent on building anything, really. It should be proving those 4 points. And that might be some wireframe visuals or something to look at in terms of showcasing the product, but you don't need to build anything necessarily. You then get your kind of pre-seed round, which is typically spent on building that proof of concept, building a minimal viable product, a very early version of the product, which you can test with beta testers and an early version of the market. That would be your first kind of official round of funding. That might be a few $100,000 invested in your company to now go, we've proven this is something the market wants and needs. Let's now go and build something, prove we can build and get early adoption and get the first few users. And with that cash, you should be getting to a point where you've built a very early version of the product and you're generating your first very early stage revenues from it. So you've got your first few users, first few customers signed up. And this could be a few hundred to a few $1,000s a month. It doesn't need to be huge money, but people are buying it. People are getting, and you're solving people's problem and they're paying you to do so. That positions you for your next round of funding, which would typically be your seed round. There you're raising kind of the higher end of the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, to now go and build this out and do a full kind of market launch. And ideally with that seed money, you should get to the point of launching this properly into the market and scaling it up to about $1 million in revenue, 80K a month in monthly revenue, or certainly heading close to that. So if you're a subscription-based business, maybe you could be showing growth. You've got to 40, 50,000 pounds a month in subscriptions, and the growth rate is that within 3 to 6 months, you would be hitting that million target, or 80,000 a month, which works out to be about $1 million a year. Then you're in a position to go for your big Series A rounds. Once you hit that $1 million revenue mark, you actually end up having venture capitalists approach you. You don't have to go and seek investment anymore. You will have venture capitalists more often than not coming and knocking on your door, going, we've been watching your growth. They normally have data from, like, they're buying data from people like Stripe and that who and they go, right, they've just hit that $1 million benchmark. Let's check them out. We've seen their growth, we're seeing their journey. We want in. Are you looking to raise a round in the future? But that would be your Series A, and you'd be raising maybe 3, 4, 5 million or more to start aggressive scale up and growth kind of strategies to get as much market share as possible. So that's the typical journey. It varies for different business models. Like if you're a med tech business listening to this, you've probably got 3 or 4 years of raising investment and spending it on market research and development and clinical trials before you would even launch anything into the market. So it does change, but as a general rule of thumb for a typical kind of high growth tech business, that would be the general journey they would go on.
The number one problem which we have actually, been studying along, there's other problems as well, but the thing is what I have actually observed, how do you balance the organic reach and the paid marketing reach? Because there's a time you might have limited amount of resources. There's limited amount of resources, but there has to be an outreach to your potential customers at that particular. I mean, should you go ahead with the organic reach initially, or the paid reach, or the hybrid situation of both of them? Because this increases your burn rate to quite a good extent.
Yeah, it can
be. So how
expensive.
do you support that? I mean, how do you? What's your advice on that?
Yeah, excuse me. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's a great point. It can be really expensive to go and do kind of paid ads and that type of outreach for an early stage startup. You might do a little bit of it, maybe do a 1 or 2 week campaign as to a test landing page as part of your validation and traction, and perhaps then you've got a bit of an idea of what that cost would be. For every £10 I spend, I get 1 lead, or $10 or whatever it may be, and then you can use that as part of your pitch to say, if we need to get to 1 million users and it's costing us X per user, we're going to need Y in capital just for the marketing. It's obviously very, very expensive. So at an early stage, before you're raising huge sums of money to kind of pay for this sort of more expensive marketing approach, it is all about the hustle. It's about the hustle and the grind. It's about networking. It's about meeting people. It's about getting out there, trying to forge partnerships with communities that have a captive audience of people who would benefit from your product, and doing pitch events, doing social events, doing everything you can to just kind of warm them up and nurturing them. The mistake a lot of founders make is they try and sell their product. I think you should kind of build a relationship with these communities, put on events for them that wouldn't cost a lot, just time to organize, put on informational things. So nurture people, help them identify the problems, help them see the potential of the solution. And then at the very end of that presentation, go, oh, by the way, we've got a product that does this for you. So you kind of go, and here's your problem, here's how you might solve it. And by the way, we happen to have a product that you could access right now that will solve this for you straight away. But you don't have to buy it. You can follow the approach that we just shared with you and do it yourself. So strategies like that to build and support communities and kind of leverage partnerships with others. If you can, a great entrepreneur, and the sort of entrepreneur most investors would want to invest into, is something I call highly resourceful. They're able to make stuff happen. They're able to get people to buy into your vision. So there's no reason why, if you're going to be a great founder and you're going to be able to succeed at this, you should be able to go and pitch your vision to communities and other businesses with a captive audience of your perfect target, and come up with some kind of partnership that's a win-win for both. So if I put on this free event for your community, they're going to get loads of knowledge. In return, I want a 15-minute slot at the end of that presentation to do a sales pitch of my product. It's a win-win. Your audience get a lot out of it. You look like a really supportive organization. I get access to your people and the opportunity to start building a relationship with them. That sort of thing that sort of thinking of how I can do with one relationship that opens me out to many relationships is how you're going to kind of growth hack and scale your business in the early stages, when you don't have the capital for Facebook ads or Google ads and that type of marketing.
Right. Good to hear that, James. Since you mentioned about getting the 15-minute slot, right? And before we reach that part, we have a very short duration show time, right? With the investors, it could be like a minute or 2 minute max, right? During this short time, how do you think, or would be the best elevator pitch, or the pitch should be for the founders, for the investors, to get the 15 minutes, or to enter the door of that community, right? Typically what happens is, during that 2 minutes, the founders are so overwhelmed with, hey, I have got so much knowledge, but I want to just transfer that knowledge so that you just say yes to us, right? But
Yes.
that typically never happens, right? They just shut off the door and say, I literally didn't get what you're trying to say within 2 minutes, so they just knock off from the door.
Yeah, that's it. So founders sort of put themselves in this position where this is sort of a really high pressure environment. I've got to get so much across in 2 minutes. They need to be so impressed with me so they can invest. That if you take one thing away from today's podcast, if you're listening to this, it would be that you are never pitching for investment, ever. Not once has a founder ever pitched for investment. What they've pitched for is time. You are pitching for the investor to want to invest their time in finding out more about you and your business and your opportunity. So you're never trying to get everything across. So it's not like Dragon's Den or Shark Tank or whatever the show's called in your country, with stacks of cash on the table where they invest at the end of that pitch. There is a whole series of questions and due diligence and meetings that follow. All you're trying to do with that pitch is get the investor that you're pitching to secure that second meeting, so you can go through the detail in more detail with them. So your pitch is kind of the summary, it's the top level, it's the trailer that sells the movie. You're just trying in those 2 minutes to intrigue them enough that they want to engage with you further. They'll ask you more questions, and then they'll want to book that second and third meeting with you. And that's all your job is. So keep it as a short, concise, articulate summary, and then let the conversation and the relationship build from there.
That is a very good point. Let the conversation flow. Let develop a relationship before moving into the next round of. It's always good to build trust and relationship before we are going forward with the business. That is brilliant. I think we just have
people buy from people.
Exactly.
And people invest in people. It's the same theory.
Yeah. Even when you're pitching, going out for your interviews, it's more like a relationship rather than one shot interview. But these days, the interview is like one shot, you are out or in. But you're way much ahead of when you said that you're buying your time for the next phase of their time. And that is more like, if they are giving you the next time slot, that means you have actually built a positive relationship with them.
That's it.
Because that's a huge amount of money which they are going to invest in you. And that is only possible when they trust you. That is brilliant. I think we have 8 to 9 minutes more to go. If you can just let me know let's wrap up the meeting. And this is a wonderful session which we had. And secondly, if people wants to find you out to get your advice, where they can reach out to you so that we can, ask our listeners to reach out to you or us in the same way. So if you can just let us know
Yeah,
how
so
easy is possible to reach out to you.
yeah, so the best thing to do if your listeners are thinking of raising investment at some point in the future, the very best thing you can do right now is go to pitchready.co.uk. That will take you to an online assessment. It's a 3-minute assessment, about 10, I think it's about 20 to 30 kind of yes no questions. Fill that out, and you'll get a free 12-page tailored report on your current investment readiness. It will score you across 3 key areas, and you'll get a bespoke score for each one with tips and advice on how to improve your current investment readiness. From there, you'll also be able to request a copy of my book for free, either the audiobook or a digital PDF of that book for free. And you'll also get access to a whole load of free resources and content from the team at Robot Mascot. So that's probably the very best thing you could do if you're looking to start that funding journey and find out more about how investable you currently are. Is just go to pitchready.co.uk.
Brilliant. That's about it. Arsalan, do you have any further questions?
I got one. The last one. What's the one word that would you use to summarize the Investable Entrepreneur book? Just in one word.
Oh, great question. Journey. It's all about taking you on a journey from what you know right now about raising investment to a point where you feel you understand the process, what you need in place, kind of taking you from the point where you perhaps feel lost in a maze, you don't know quite where to go or where to turn, and kind of lifting you out of that maze and giving kind of 100-foot view of the path to successfully convincing an investor. So it's about the journey you go on to make that happen and get the cash in the bank.
Perfect. Good to hear that. I guess we can wrap it up here. Perfect. Thanks, James. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Ajmal. And yeah, good.
Thank
Thank you
you
for having me.
everyone.
It's been an
Cheers.
absolute
Thank you.
pleasure.
It was pleasure. Yeah, same as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.